All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to another wonderful Aquarium Online Academy. My name is Jen, and today, friends, we are going to be talking about a very special animal that my friend Ty is actually going to be putting up in a little bit. With these animals that we're going to be talking about, keeping it a surprise, I am really excited just to share and to talk a little bit about them, where they live, and then also some of the features that make them as wonderful as they are. Now, at any point in time you want to share your favorite thoughts about these mystery creatures, you're always welcome to go on ahead and text us down below 562-286-1838. If you prefer to email us, we're happy to be able to respond that way too, down below, live@lbaop.org. The text is live, so it's only during our live span. So if you happen to be watching today on January the 21st at 10 a.m. to about 10:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, that's when we'll be able to answer those texts super quickly. All right, friends. But I have a very fun way, actually I should say Ty has a very fun way of being able to introduce our animal for the next half hour. So I'm going to step off the screen right here. Any guesses to what you think our mystery animal might be? If you want to go on ahead and let us know, you're always welcome to text us. But what do you think? What animal do you think we might be talking about? Now I'm going to use my eyes to make some observations to just basically see if there are any clues that can help us figure that out. You can go on ahead and see all these puzzle pieces to help you try to figure out too what we're looking at. I'll step off the screen so we get a nice full view right here of our mystery animal. I don't know about you, but I am seeing some green all around right here, up here, and down here. There's some really kind of fun and beautiful patterns too that I'm seeing. And to me, that almost looks like a shell. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Ty, go on ahead and finish off that puzzle. All right, if you were guessing sea turtle, absolutely. We had some nice sea turtle inspired music that we could listen to this morning too, along with our beautiful picture of our sea turtle. All right, friends, but today we're going to be talking a little bit about sea turtles as reptiles and really kind of what makes a reptile, aside from this cute little face that's, that anyone could basically love. All right, so if you had to think about it, a reptile, what kind of image comes to mind? Is it a sea turtle that comes to mind? Or is it anything else that maybe kind of comes to mind? Or are there any features that you're like, yes, I know, reptiles lay eggs, right? Or is there anything else that you happen to know about reptiles that you are interested in sharing about what makes a reptile a reptile? Feel free to send that on in right to the text. But I'm going to step off the screen a little bit so you can see our sea turtle in all of its glory. And you may be thinking about, well, for reptiles, we talked about them laying eggs, they also happen to have scaly skin. So you can go on ahead and see it all on our beautiful, lovely alligator right on over here. And you can see, wow, look at all those scales. And you can even see a little bit on its mouth too, a little bit up above its nose. Boop, ha ha ha, right? And then actually underneath, you can see it really well, all those beautiful scales of our other reptile example here, right? So we know so far that they lay eggs, they have scaly skin, and believe it or not, they're actually, which is tricky to know, but they actually are vertebrates, meaning that they have a backbone like you and me. So if you go on ahead and you touch kind of the back of your back area right here in the very middle, we have vertebrae, which are basically bones that are stacked on top of one another, and with that, it creates our backbone that we have. Now, it's different for all different animals, and you can't actually see it within the sea turtle from just looking at it, but it actually has a vertebrae or a backbone in it as well. So those are some of the things that really kind of make a reptile a reptile. I believe they also have cold blood too, which is another fun feature of them. Many times they have to sit in the sun, much like our beautiful iguana friend here, that just basically sits in the sun so it gets nice and warm to warm up that blood. Awesome. All right, so we have lots of different beautiful mammals. I'm sorry, not mammals, reptiles. And with these reptiles, too, they have different kinds of what we like to call adaptations. Have you ever heard of that word before? Adaptation? Hmm. Is there anything that comes to mind when you think of that word, adaptation? Well, for me, I definitely think about an adaptation as something on a body or on a animal or plant that really helps it to survive in its habitat or its home, right? So if I had to think about me, and in order to be able to be a land animal and breathe air, what do I have in me or you that helps us to be able to breathe that air? Hmm. Need help? You can take a nice deep breath. Now, aside from our nose, it would be the lungs that are inside of us that help us to be able to breathe, right? So the lungs help us as an adaptation, a feature on us or in us that help us to be able to breathe air, which we need to survive. Much like our sea turtles here, right? We can see our beautiful sea turtle, and it is popping up for some air too. Because believe it or not, it also has lungs inside to be able to help it to breathe. But if we think about fish, right? Fish, do they have lungs? For the most part, no, right? They have gills that help them to breathe. So fish have gills that are able to grab that oxygen, that air out of the water, and that's what they use. That's their adaptation, right? Their special feature to help them to breathe. Now, another example might be how we move, right? So for us in the wild, we go ahead and we use our legs, right? Mainly to move and moving around, walking around. But in the water, like for our sea turtles, what do you think might be their adaptation to help them to move around? Hmm. Do you see any clues right here on our sea turtle? Yeah, they have flippers, right? So our sea turtles have flippers right here, and you can see this beautiful video right here of how they move. Now, if we had to really look at which set of flippers they use to swim, what do you notice? Seems to be their front flippers, right, that they use to be able to move around. They use their back ones a little bit too, but really their back ones are used a little bit more for steering than anything else, right? It's the front ones that really kind of help move them along right there. My gosh, that water was so clear that you could see a scuba diver in there, which is pretty incredible. And a little fish that wants to hang out. My, that fish was camouflaged well. Really tricky to see how well it blended in with that sand. So here we can see, right, it's another adaptation, another feature, is that our sea turtle is able to use those flippers to be able to move while we would use our feet, right? So we go on ahead and we think about our sea turtles here. Today we are focusing on sea turtles, but of course there are also turtles on land as well, right? So if we had to go on ahead and maybe think about some of the differences between land and ocean turtles, those are also special adaptations for each type because they live in different habitats or different homes, right? So for our land friend right here, I'll step out of the way so you can see it in all of its beautifulness. This looks like one of the box tortoises or box turtles, if I'm not mistaken. It's tortoise. So with this tortoise that we have right here, sorry, I need some more coffee this morning, it looks like. We go on ahead, and what are some features that you notice about our tortoise? We'd love to hear from you if you want to go on ahead and chime on in. I think for me, some things that I notice about our tortoise is that unlike our sea turtle that had flippers to be able to move around, right? Our tortoise here has, well, actual legs, right? So there's two legs here, and then there's one, and then there's another one on the opposite side, right? So our tortoise here happens to have 4 legs instead of flippers. Now, why is that? When I think about a tortoise with flippers, I think it would look kind of funny. But do you think flippers work very well on land? No, right? They really don't. They're made for swimming through the water because they're really broad, almost like paddles that they could use. Could you imagine this friend swimming a lot in the water with the actual type of legs that it has for our tortoise? Not so much, right? And so each set of legs or flippers for our turtles and tortoises are basically made to do different things, right? Our turtles, their habitat is the ocean, and our tortoise is the habitat is on land, right? More desert-y sort of areas. So they're built a little bit differently. Now, what's really amazing is you can see those scales really well here too, right? So you can see the scales on top of the head. You can see the scales on its legs right here, which is pretty incredible too. But friends, did you know that the shell is also made up of scales? Different kinds of scales, but they're still scales, which I think is amazing. And all of the tortoises, turtles, land, or water all have different patterns, and those different patterns help us to be able to identify, whereas one of the ways in which we can identify what kind of reptile they happen to be, what kind of turtle or tortoise. So that's really fun to be able to see. And we could see here too, right? Very different kinds of scales, and scutes is what we like to call a lot of these, right? The scales as they're kind of put together. So these are actual scales that make up the shell for both our sea turtle as well as for our land tortoise as well. So pretty amazing. Now their food source is also very different too. We can just go on ahead and look at the mouth of our sea turtle right here. And let's see if we could see the mouth of that tortoise again. Taking a good look of that sea turtle right there. Now if we think about it, right, their food source is also going to be different, just thinking about where they live. Oh, look at that cutie little mouth right there, right? Very different in size. A little bit different in shape too. I feel like that other one was a little bit more rounded versus this one, it looks pretty much kind of straight, right, for our tortoise right there. So their food source is also going to be a bit different, finding food on land and those challenges that takes versus finding food in the water and some of those challenges on those food sources too. So if we also go ahead and think about one last main difference, right, which is whether or not they could tuck their body parts into their shell. For turtles, yeah, they pretty much can, right? They can go on ahead and tuck their appendages on in, and they can protect themselves that way on land. But believe it or not, in the ocean, that's not really an option. So in the ocean, they cannot squeeze their head on into their shell or any of their flippers on into their shell. They just are the way they are. So that's another main difference between land and ocean. All right, friends. So, Ty, if you want to pick a turtle of your choice, beautiful. I want to share with you a little bit more about how we can tell some of the differences between different sea turtles. So here we have our olive ridley sea turtle right here. You can see kind of from the color of it, it's a little bit kind of a darker green, but some of that happens to be from the algae that grows on top of the shell. Do you think these turtles are very fast swimmers in the ocean? No, they're not super fast, right? So their algae will actually grow on the shell, kind of giving them a little bit of a color. But one way that we can actually tell the difference between sea turtles is by looking at their shell. As I mentioned before, we can go on ahead and look at the patterns. And so here I have a green sea turtle shell, and we can go on ahead and just get a chance to see all the different, what we like to call scutes, right? And what's neat from this top view that we're seeing right here is that a lot of scientists can go on ahead and tell the type of sea turtle, aside from maybe looking at the shape of its head, by looking at the shell too. So scientists will go on ahead and count how many scutes are on the side right here, and also how many are down the middle, and they'll be able to figure it out. Another thing that you can also look at is actually the shape of the scutes too. So here we can go on ahead and see all the different shapes of the scutes and how kind of rectangular they are, and all the different differences in shapes as you kind of move down and you see them on the side, but also the shape of the actual shell itself, right? We can see all of the scutes are all within this one shell. Now if we look at a different one, like our hawksbill sea turtle, here we can see that the scutes look actually quite different. So here we can see that they're not kind of put together like puzzle pieces, but they're kind of more like roof shingles, right? They go on ahead and they overlap one another. So we can see how that one is fused all together. All of them are just kind of all together there. But this one, we can see that there's, actual layers. Just kidding. This one is a hawksbill as well from what I can see, right? So here we can go on ahead and see all of these different scutes all on top of one another. And also the shape is very different too, right? If we go on ahead and we look right here, they're actually more kind of diamond-y shape than our green sea turtle here. And still kind of rectangular, but kind of have a different shape overall. And then if we look at the shell like completely, right, their shape is actually, sorry, sea turtle, is also very different. There we go. There we go. Right? So here we have that same sea turtle right back there. And we're able to see here how all of those plates overlap. But if we go ahead and we look closely, there's actually this entire little pattern all around here. Let's see if I can just kind of showcase this against that blue background where you could see it a little bit better. This one's a little bit broken, but you can get a chance to see how some of these scoots right here kind of overlap and go outside of our sea turtle shell, which is pretty interesting too. There we go. All right, so those are some ways in which you could tell, aside from the actual pattern of the little scoots on top of their heads as well. So that's another defining feature of sea turtles. Ah, yeah, now here is a leatherback sea turtle. So talk about that pattern, right? Completely different here. It almost looks prehistoric. I mean, look at this thing. Now, leatherbacks happen to be the largest sea turtle, weighing over several thousand pounds. But here we could go on ahead and see their scoots are completely different, right? They actually have little ridges that go all along their back. Now, we talked a little bit about adaptations. And for our leatherback sea turtle here, it's actually not as hard as the other turtle shells that we saw earlier. It's actually a little bit bendy or flexible because they do a lot of their grazing, a lot of their hunting deep down in the ocean waters. So they're our deepest diving sea turtle, and they're able to go really down deep to be able to get their food. Now, because they have to go super deep down, there's a lot of pressure that the water puts on and can kind of squeeze on their shell. So if they had a regular kind of shell, like a lot of our other sea turtles, then it would crack. But because they have a bendy shell, that helps them to be able to withstand a lot of that pressure that the deep ocean can put on them. So it's a really cool feature. Now, these sea turtles are actually quite large in size and are a lot bigger than many of our other sea turtles. They have been around for quite some time, believe it or not, about 150 million years. So if they look prehistoric, that's because they are. And their overall size, tricky to see because they dive in murky waters a lot of times, are nutrient rich, filled with a lot of good vitamins and a lot of plankton for a lot of our other ocean animals. They can be up to 6 feet long, so they're quite large. But what they do is they dive really deep and they eat jellies. Jellies is actually one of their all-time favorite food. So if you've heard of jellyfish, that's what their favorite food is. Just pretty incredible. And they will go deeper in the ocean to get it. Now, there are other sea turtles that will eat jellies as well. Those other ones will eat jellies that aren't as deep down. So it's kind of nice that even though many sea turtles might eat jellies, where they eat them in the ocean is different. So that way they never really have to compete very much for food with one another, which is really nice, especially for our leatherback sea turtle here. Now in the ocean, believe it or not, there are even more other varieties of sea turtles. We've just been talking about leatherback sea turtles here, and then also green sea turtles and hawksbill sea turtles. But believe it or not, there's also black sea turtles. There's also a flatback sea turtle. There's loggerhead sea turtles, Kemp's Ridley sea turtles, and then olive ridley, which is what we started out talking about today. So there's lots of different kinds of sea turtles, and I'm excited to share some of this with you. Now, what's pretty fun here is that we have a lot of green sea turtle footage, and with that, we can get a chance to really kind of see our sea turtles in action, which is super fun to see. Now, our sea turtles, we mentioned, eat a lot of jellies, but not all of our sea turtles eat primarily jellies. Some of them will go on ahead and eat seagrass, like our green sea turtle here. And believe it or not, the way that it gets its name is not necessarily the fact that it is kind of greeny in color, but it has to do with the amount of seagrass that it actually goes on ahead and eats. It gives the actual like meat itself a little bit of a green color, green tinge. And so that's actually how it gets its name, green sea turtle. So you can kind of get a chance to see, right, the way that its eyes are, it's kind of downwards. It has that almost like beak that it uses to be able to eat a lot of that food, which is really kind of cool. We could see it again, kind of chomping down on some of that seagrass that it has. Wow. So neat to be able to see. All right. Now, believe it or not, we also have kind of a green sea turtle skeleton right here, at least a model of it. And you can really kind of get a chance to see, I'll put it on our document camera, a little bit of its actual beak. I was hoping that maybe we could see it a little bit clearly here, but I think it's a little tricky to see. So I'm going to go on ahead and use our document camera to get a better view. I feel like sometimes with some of our biofacts that we use, you can kind of get a good view via camera, but this one was a little tricky, and that's okay too. Now, all of our sea turtles, like we mentioned, kind of eat slightly different foods. Some of them, might be able to go other different kinds of food. Like sometimes some of them will eat smaller fish and whatnot. But with these animals, right, a lot of times we can go on ahead and tell, like with many other animals, the shape of its beak and mouth. And that will go on ahead and give us a really good idea of what we're looking at. So here I can go on ahead and have it in half so you can get a chance to see how it's actually almost plated. I'm trying to get the light on, but it's on a delay, so apologies for that. Here we go. So here we can see that actually underneath it's quite rough, and this is the very front and top of it. And you can see that it almost kind of looks like a beak of some sort, right? And part of the reason why it is so tough underneath is also because of the types of food that it goes on ahead and eat, right? So in this case, it's eating a lot of seagrass. It needs to have a little bit toughness on the inside of its mouth to be able to grab and hold on to it. We can see just on this side, I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see it even better and closer, right? That it has lots of ridges. So all of these ridges go on ahead and it helps cut that seagrass so that way it's easier for them to be able to grab that seagrass. It's not just completely flat. They can tear it out a little bit more and get a better grip of that seagrass right there. So pretty neat. Now here at the Aquarium of the Pacific, we have several different varieties of sea turtles. We have a green sea turtle. We also have a few olive ridley sea turtles. And, they have to eat too. So here at the aquarium, we have a feeding station. That feeding station allows our animals, especially like our sea turtle here, to be able to come up and eat some food. So as I mentioned before, sea turtles, some varieties will eat more than just jellies or seagrass. And so in this instance, they're getting some squid to be able to eat as well. It's always nice to have a varied diet when and where you can so you can get different kinds of nutrients and be extra healthy in that regards. And so you'll see our aquarists, our folks taking care of our animals here, and especially our sea turtles, they put out a little marker and they know exactly where our sea turtle's at. You see that marker right there? It's basically a Kong, a dog toy right there. And that's how they know, okay, this is my station, this is where my seat at the table is, and then they're able to eat that piece of squid right there, right out of the tongues of the person that's taking care of the animals. So that's a pretty fun one. Yep. Now here at the Aquarium of the Pacific, we not only go on ahead and take care of our animals that we happen to have on exhibit, but we also happen to be a sea turtle rescue facility as well. So us, along with a variety of other institutions all up and down our California coast, we're able to heed the call of rescue if a sea turtle happens to be in our area that needs some rehabilitation or at least some rescuing. So we are actually able, on average, we rescue green sea turtles more so than any others because of where we happen to be located. We even have a monitoring program ran by citizen scientists, believe it or not, that's able to track a lot of sea turtles that are going up and down San Gabriel River, actually, is the one that they're able to track to find these green sea turtles here. So not only are we able to monitor the sea turtles, but we're also able to, like I mentioned before, rescue them too. A lot of times they will be stunned, meaning that, they won't be able to move a whole lot. They'll be a little bit sluggish on top of whatever injury they happen to be dealing with. And so we'll go on ahead and get a call, and we'll go on ahead and rescue and rehabilitate the sea turtle the best that we can at our Molina Animal Care Center, which is our actual on-site animal hospital, if you will. Much like many other medical facilities that we might be familiar with, right? A doctor's office. All of our animals here, all of our over 12,000 animals here, will get care at the Molina Animal Care Center, whether it be dental visits or whether it just be a wellness check or whether it be a rescue and rehabilitation center. Our Molina Animal Care Center can do it all, which I think is pretty neat. So from time to time, we will go on ahead and rescue these animals, and here is a view of our team. And they put that sea turtle on a stretcher, and they're able to release it back out into the ocean, which is pretty fun. Look at that sea turtle go. Wow. So it's pretty neat that that's just one area that we can go on ahead and make an impact and really try to be able to bring sea turtles back into the wild. All right, friends, if you have any other questions or anything you'd like to share about sea turtles, we would love to hear from you. Feel free to go on ahead and text us right on in here. I'll let you watch that release one more time. 562-286-1838. Wow, that's always so fun. It never grows old, right? That we're able to see all of these wonderful sea turtles, whether or not here at the aquarium or out in the wild. Now, I wanted to save the best footage for last, which is really kind of thinking about turtles laying eggs, right? We talked a little bit about some of their adaptations, mainly of them being in the water. But did you know that sea turtles also lay eggs? And they actually do it on land? They do. That is one time in which they actually come on up to land, and the females will go on ahead and they will bury their eggs into the sand. And when the time is right, those babies will hatch out of the sand right here. Oh, so cute. And then they will go back out into the ocean. So good, right? So here we can see them on land, and they're using those flippers. And as babies, right, they are quite small, and they are just trying to make their way back into the water. And it takes a little bit of time. As we can see, these are baby leatherback sea turtles because we can see all those little stripies on them, right? Makes it easy to identify leatherback sea turtle. Their color helps too. They're kind of that dark grayish color. And we can see they're trying to move. And of course, unlike the land tortoise that we saw earlier, right? These sea turtles do not have feet. So they have to use those big bulky flippers to be able to try to get them into the ocean. And as you can see, it's no easy feat. Probably doesn't help that they're also literally just born, so it takes them a minute, right? But we can go on ahead and see that it is tricky to be able to use those flippers on land. So could you imagine being the mama sea turtle and you're 2,000 pounds and you're trying to make your way onto the beach and dragging your entire body to then create a hole to lay all those eggs, and then to carry yourself all the way back into the water? My gosh, that is an incredible feat. But look at this little baby go, right? It's so neat to be able to see them move around. Wow, what cuties. All right, so as we had a chance to think about our sea turtle say, we went ahead and learned a lot, right? We went ahead and talked a little bit about what makes a sea turtle a reptile, right? And what are some characteristics of a reptile? We talked a little bit how they have a vertebrae or a spine right back here, right? Bones that help them to give structure to their bodies. We talked a little bit how they actually have scales, right? No matter what kind of reptile you might be. We also talked a little bit about how they have cold blood within them and that they usually lay eggs, right? And so those are just some of the main features of what it means to be a reptile. Then we had a chance to look at some of the differences between a tortoise versus a sea turtle, right? Looking at their flippers, looking at their shell shape and type, right? And also looking at their mouths as well. So looking at some of those features or adaptations of these animals within their different kinds of habitat, the ocean versus the desert. And then, of course, we focus on our sea turtle friends, learning a little bit more about how to identify the different varieties, right? By looking at that shell, looking at the pattern on top of their head, looking at the pattern of their scoots and how many there are on their shell, right? Are some great ways to be able to figure that out. And then looking at their food source, what they eat and how they eat, right? Looking at that shape of their mouth right there. That's pretty incredible. And just really kind of getting to know how we here at the Aquarium of the Pacific are able to take care of sea turtles and help them back out into the wild. All right, well, our time is up. I wish we could keep on talking about sea turtles, friends. But if you do have any other questions or comments, we'd love to hear from you. feel free to go on ahead and send us an email at live@lbaop.org right down here below. Otherwise, we'll see you next time, friends. Have a great and safe rest of your day. Bye.